What's up, lords and ladies? Welcome back to another video on this channel. So in today's video, I wanted to dedicate this video to at least answer a couple questions or a question on Instagram. So I've been getting a lot of messages, there's at least 20 messages a day, if not a couple hundred. Really all depends on how active I am. But what I've been getting is a lot of questions that are basically almost the same, which in my part, I love helping people. I love working with animals, and I'm really grateful to be in the position that I'm in to help others with just the knowledge that I've been gathering around throughout the years of keeping reptiles. However, there's only one of me, and whenever I'm not cleaning my reptiles or doing these types of videos, sometimes I'm answering questions, but there's times where I just can't be on my phone and I need to basically feed my reptiles, clean my reptiles, make these videos. So time is really tight, but I figured if I scheduled at least once a week to just answer as much questions as I can, or answer one question, that way if there is a repetitive or a question that repeats itself, I could just link them this video and help them out accordingly. So what I'm going to be doing is, like I said, once a week I'm going to answer some questions. So if you have a question, put in the comment section down below, or follow me on Instagram at _LordOfLion, and I'm going to basically be answering your questions video form. So before you ask me a question, put the word help in big exclamation. Maybe put a couple dinosaurs, I don't know. But put a big word help and a dinosaur emoji. That way I know that you guys want me to answer your questions, in a video form. And if you've asked me a question in the past, do the exact same thing. Just spam me with the word help and a dinosaur emoji. That way I know, okay, this question needs to be answered in a video form, and I would get to it. So I might be doing a couple questions, like I said, or I might just do one simple question dedicated to the video. So enough of me talking, let's just get started with this video. Let's go. But before we go, oh man, there's been a few people being like, Lord of Lion, you haven't been doing the zoom ins. Like, those were my favorite things to do. You already know what time it is. We gotta zoom in. Woo, baby. Rest in peace, BB, but you my baby girl right there. I just wanted to dedicate this time also for my future wife. I still got the curls for the girls, and I've been feeling myself lately. Woo, man. Had to bring them back, I haven't been doing them for a good while. I had to bring them back. Okay, so this question is by Poppy Pay. Hopefully I'm saying your name right, and hopefully this video helps on time. I am going to respond to this question afterwards, but I really wanted to put out this video because it does seem like a good question that could help many. So this question goes, hello, I usually watch your channel and others for bearded dragon advice. However, my girl Bella Rose, which by the way, Bella Rose, that's a really nice name. Like, that's catchy. Bella Rose, I like it. Bella Rose is pregnant. She should be laying her eggs this week. I've taken her to the vet for a checkup, but I need advice for the setup of her eggs. Which, by the way, good job on taking her to the vet. Sometimes we overlook, the whole pregnancy, and we think we have everything under control, which most of the times everything goes smoothly. But sometimes with bearded dragons, there's complications that happen. Sometimes they don't, give birth to all of the eggs, and some eggs are stuck inside and they get egg bound, and that causes more complications. So you definitely want to make sure that you're keeping an eye. If you notice anything weird happening, definitely consult with a vet. I have a still air incubator and everything else I believe I'll need, but I'm not sure how to set it up and what temperatures to keep the eggs, or how much water they will need to keep the humidity level. And I also wanted to know if the forced air fan is needed. I usually Google or YouTube all things to know, but I haven't came across a step-by-step video on how to maintain it for bearded dragons. Please respond sometime this week if possible. Thanks. So hopefully I'll respond to this question right after this video, but you know, hopefully everything is going well throughout the pregnancy, and the vet said that she's okay. But when it comes to incubating bearded dragon eggs, now this is something that every breeder does differently. Each incubator might be a little bit different as well. So, you know, whatever I do works for what I'm doing, but sometimes you have to go and kind of improvise with what you've got. So when it comes to the whole forced air fan, I'm assuming you're going about the fan inside of the incubator. You know, I highly recommend that you do use one. Sometimes you could get away with just using a cheap computer desk fan that you could place somewhere inside of the incubator with the wire sticking out through either a hole. You know, you do say that you have an incubator. You could get away with, you know, without a fan, but basically the whole fan is to circulate the heat inside. That way it's not just in one area. But in the past, I have had you know, an incubator with no fan, and it has no issue. But I find that the more eggs and the more clutches you have in the incubator, the more important it is for the fan to be circulating the air inside. And just overall, it's best to have it. So if you can, get it. I'm assuming that's what you mean by it. If not, just respond back to me, and you know, we'll figure things out. But I'm gonna go ahead and show you what I do to incubate my eggs, even though I don't have any eggs right now, but I'll still show you. And that way you can have a successful clutch and everything could go well. So let's go and do that. Okay, so step number one, get yourself an incubator. Now, this is an incubator that I built myself. All I really did was get an old wine fridge. As you can see, it even has a dent. But this is an old wine fridge that no longer works. And I gutted it out, and I basically put heat tape at the back, and I drilled a hole at the back over here about this big, and I wired in everything through there. So the heat tape runs from back there all the way down. Now the heat tape is controlled by a thermostat that is basically up here. The thermostat is highly needed, because if not, the heat tape is just gonna run on full max, and it's basically gonna cook your eggs. So depending on your incubator, you're gonna have to determine what is the right temperature. So before the eggs are laid, you really want to make sure that you have the probe in there from the thermostat, as well as that you're checking the temperatures with a temperature gun. That way everything goes smoothly. Now luckily, I've owned this incubator for quite some time, so I know every single corner, and I know what I need to do to make sure that I have a successful you know, eggs. So as you could see inside, I actually have some ball python eggs. I have 3 clutches in the incubator, and there is some condensation on them, so that is something that I'm gonna go in there and clean. But it's mostly because ball pythons and bearded dragons are completely different when it comes to incubating them. So right now I don't have any other species that are laying eggs, just ball pythons. But with what I have here, I'm basically gonna show you guys what I do with bearded dragons, because it's very simple and it's very similar to any other reptile, except the temperatures and maybe how much water you put in the vermiculite. So this is step number one. Get yourself an incubator. You could get incubators, sometimes you could find them already built on Craigslist or on Kijiji, or you could sometimes even purchase them already built. You know, I believe Exoterra has one. I believe ZooMed also has one. If not, if you're really handy, you could try to build one. It's super easy. I think I paid about $50 just for this. I already had the thermostat and the heat tape, so it really only cost me $50 on my end to purchase the actual fridge. But the thermostat I'm using, I believe it's 150, could be a little bit more, so it could run you quite a bit. However, if you are planning on building your own incubator, there is cheaper thermostats out there that you could use. I'll link in the description down below maybe a thermostat that you could find that is cheap that you could use on Amazon. But this is basically my setup. So once you have an incubator, the next steps are fairly easy. All right, so once you got yourself an incubator and everything is running and it's all set up, the next steps are fairly easy. So what I got here is vermiculite inside of a container. Now this is a container that you could purchase either at the dollar store, or somewhere where there's you know, cooking goods and everything. But you really want to make sure that you want to get yourself a container that seals properly. So you can see this thing is nicely sealed. It's almost airtight. Now you could get away and use containers like this as well. So this is a shoebox. This is what I use to incubate my ball python eggs, as the ball python eggs are a lot bigger. So you can see this is more shallow. So the little tiny bearded dragon eggs are a little bit better. But what I don't really like about this is that you know, it's not airtight. Now you could go ahead and put some saran wrap on it, and that would do the trick, but I find that this is a little bit too big for it. You could also get away with using smaller containers depending on your incubator size, but the whole important thing about it is that you want to make sure that you at least have a couple inches of space from the top to the substrate and everything. As well as the substrate, you want to make sure you're adding at least an inch for bearded dragons. For ball pythons, it's a little bit different, so I'll make a whole separate video for that, but it's pretty straightforward from here. You have the vermiculite, you have your container. Now it's time to add the water. Now, before I get a bunch of questions asking what substrate to use, you could use other things as well, like perlite. I believe there's other people even using equal earth. So, you know, the whole purpose between the substrates that, you know, you want to look for is something that holds humidity good. I find it a lot more easier just to use vermiculite. That's why I use this. Now you could find vermiculite at a garden center or somewhere where they sell garden goods. So it's very easy to come by. You know, I picked this up at a local hardware store. I believe I paid $10 for the pack. Now, if you're going to be breeding, you know, a lot more, you're gonna have more eggs, you could go to somewhere where they sell it in bulks. So you want to make sure that you have this in hand all the time, especially if you're gonna have eggs. And like I said, you could use other substrates, but for now I'm gonna be using vermiculite. So to set this up, pretty straightforward. What I like to do is I like to go in there and basically start from the corners and work my way out. Now I'm using lukewarm water. It's a little bit, you know, on the hotter side, but I'm not going to be putting any eggs right away, so I'm not too concerned about basically the water being a little bit too warm. But what I'm doing right here is basically just adding water. Now there's measurements online and all that stuff, but for me, I've been doing it for so long, I could basically just use my eyes and just tell. Now I could be using a little bit more vermiculite, but this seems to be just about almost good. Now, the way that you could tell that you added enough water is, what I like to do is, let's say my vermiculite is about an inch. I like adding water to maybe about here. So you should be able to see it on the side of your basically container, some of the water basically moving back and forth. Now with bearded dragons, they're pretty hardy eggs, so you could go ahead and put them on the vermiculite. However, I just find it a lot more easier just to have some sort of separation between the substrate as well as you know, the eggs. So I like to use this egg crate, or I think it's a light diffuser. You could pick this up also at a hardware store. They usually use it, I guess, for elevators or for lights. You know, they are usually in the light section of you know, the hardware store. So anywhere where they sell lights, you're already gonna go in there to pick up vermiculite, so might as well just pick this up. So because I use this, I could get away with adding as much water as I want. Of course, you don't want to add too much, but for me, you know, I don't measure anything. I'm not there sitting there with a scale. So because I'm using this, I could get away with basically adding a little bit too much water, a little bit, you know, eyeballing the water. But if you are going to be placing the eggs onto the substrate and not use this, you definitely want to get the proper measurements of the water ratio to the substrate. But right now, this is perfect. So I got my lid, got myself that vermiculite and the egg crate. Now it's time to basically put some eggs. Unfortunately, I don't have any eggs, but something I highly recommend before you place any eggs onto this, you want to make sure that you put it inside of the incubator. Let it run for maybe a couple of days. If you don't have a couple of days, then you can technically try to put him on here. But what I find is that you want to make sure that this is nice and warm before you place your eggs onto it. Now, in front of me, I got a couple of ball python eggs. Now, this is something that I like to do with my eggs. Not all the time. It's not something I do every single time, but sometimes you get a huge buildup of condensation at the top. And as you can see, it's almost like halfway. Now, these droplets are not good to be dropping onto the egg. That could even cause mold or, you know, the eggs to get wet. Now, for bearded dragons, they're a little bit more hardy. They can get a little bit more wet, but you definitely don't want them to be soaked. But just to keep things, I guess, a little bit on the safe side, something that you can do if you do see a huge buildup of condensation. That's why I highly recommend before putting your eggs in to let this run a bit. That way you could see if there's any condensation being built up. But these eggs are almost ready to cut. They're about a week away from actually, you know, either pipping on their own or me going in there and assisting. But what I'm going to be doing is, whoa, you can see the eggs in there. They're already dimpling. But what I'm going to be doing is just the condensation that has built up throughout the weeks. I am just going to clean it off. And you could see that's a lot of water. That's not good to fall on your eggs. Like I said, bearded dragons are a little bit more hardier. When it comes to the eggs, they're actually a lot more hardier than ball python eggs. But you definitely can do this, and I recommend, like I said, before putting your eggs in, to let it run for a couple of days, if not a couple of weeks, and that way you could make sure that everything is good. So I'm just gonna wipe the sides. And like I said, these guys are almost ready to be cut or assisted, or even just pip on their own. They're already dimpling. They're a couple of days out from actually being born. So I'm just gonna go in there and just clean it out. Now, if you are gonna be doing this, also make sure that your room is nice and warm. You definitely don't want to be opening up your eggs like how I did there too often. Now, when it comes to the humidity and the temperatures of bearded dragon eggs, for ball pythons it's completely different. The only reason why I'm mentioning ball pythons in this video is because I have these eggs out here, but when it comes to bearded dragons, you want to make sure that the temperatures inside of your incubator is roughly around 84 to 86. You don't want too much of a drop. They usually take around 60 days to hatch, as well as you want to make sure that your humidity stays consistent. So roughly the humidity could be anywhere from 40 to 50. They don't need a super high amount of humidity. Like I mentioned, you know, if you do it this kind of way, you could go around and add as much water as you want, as long as it's not completely soaking the whole entire bin. But you want to make sure that your humidity stays consistent, as well as you want to make sure your temperatures stay consistent. That way your bearded dragons have a good time, I guess, inside of the incubator, and they all hatch out perfectly fine. You don't want to be opening it, closing it, checking it, and everything. So, like I said, it's fairly simple to incubate eggs, and hopefully this video sort of helps. I did use a little bit of an example of the ball pythons and what I do with them. Very similar to what I do with the bearded dragons. So you can see the vermicula is about yay high, and the water level comes about here, as well as I have the light diffuser. There is some condensation being built up on these, which goes to show that I maybe add a little bit too much water, but nothing is dripping on the egg, so it's perfectly fine. So I might go in there later on and maybe wipe them down. But like I said, as long as you're checking to make sure that they're not dripping on the eggs, they should be perfectly fine. So hopefully this video has helped out. If you have any more questions, do message me back. That way we could maybe figure things out. But like I said, if you have any questions, and this goes out to anyone out there, I can even answer relationship questions if you want me to, because if you got questions, I got answers. So hopefully you guys out there are staying safe. Send me your questions and I'll answer it in video form. Next week, hopefully we can answer a couple of questions back to back. That way it's not just one question, because there's a ton of questions I need to go through. I am going to be answering more, so if I don't make it, If I don't post about it on YouTube, I will try to answer back. So definitely hit me up at _LordOfLion. If you aren't already subscribed to the channel, what are you waiting for? We're trying to hit 100,000 subscribers before the end of this year. So tell your grandma, tell your grandpa to subscribe to the channel if they haven't. Man, because at the end of the day, I'm here to help. And like I said, you got questions and I got your answers. So I'm Lord of Lion, keep the blood pumping, and we'll see you guys in my next video. Peace.
You gotta hit that notification, hit that notification, hit that notification button, baby. You gotta hit that notification, hit that notification, hit that notification.